Well, hello everyone. It's about that time. This is your amazing new host, Dr. Mischele Watson, and I personally want to welcome you to my new podcast, Let's Just Talk About It, the premier place to keep up to date on some amazing topics and discussions that will encourage you to consider the phenomenal power of change. I hope you enjoy the show, so let's get straight into it. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for joining us in this episode of Let's Just Talk About It. I'm your host, Dr. Mischele Watson, and I'm so glad you are here to join us for this amazing episode. Can I tell you how excited I am to have you joining us today? That's a yup, absolutely indeed. Yes, this is an exciting time as we take this entire season about the amazing power of change. We have some phenomenal guests joining us as they don't disappoint. I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to shout out all the people that have helped to make this podcast come to life. Thanks to our producer, Kratos Media, and my musical intro outro phenomenal mentor, Dr. Ronnie Song of August Child Media, and of course, our special guest. Today, we have with us Joseph Price. He is the CEO of Simplicity Management, LLC, out of Raleigh, North Carolina. He is an author, a father, and a visionary. And Simplicity Management is a consulting and education company that specializes in equipping individuals and small business owners with the knowledge and tools needed to navigate the financial world. And at its core, they are a credit restoration company with goals to branch further on helping to offer other services to instilling proper financial management. Why don't you join me in welcoming Joseph Price to our podcast today?
Thank you.
Yay! So glad to have you with us. Wow. Well,
Good to
Joseph,
be here.
so glad. Absolutely. So glad you're with us. We have a great episode today because I know that Simplicity Management is doing some phenomenal things. And I wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to be a part of our podcast because we want to ensure that people understand, especially Black men, their responsibilities in building financial wealth and have financial literacy, right? That helps to take them to the next level in their lives. And I know this is something that you are extremely passionate about. And here's something else. I want you all to know that Joseph, this is his formal name. Back in the day, many years ago, when he was a young man, his name was Joey, but he has now progressed into Joseph and he is doing phenomenal things in his business. He is also the author of a phenomenal new book, and he's going to tell you a little bit about it. And we're going to get into that, and he'll let you know where you'll be able to purchase a copy from. All right, Joseph. Now, I want us to talk a little bit about financial literacy. Tell me a little bit about what kind of prompted you to get into this field because there are so many things that anybody can choose in life, because life be life. And tell me a little bit about how Simplicity Management was birthed.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you for the introduction. It was amazing. Thank you so much. I'm very humbled, very thankful to be up here, first and foremost. Just thank you for that. As for Simplicity Management and how I actually got into it, it really just came to just constantly reading, building on my intellectual property. One of the main books that really changed my perception on finances was Tony Robbins' book, Money Master the Game. And that's when I think was my awakening into like the financial industry. Although I did go to college, I went to Coastline Community College for business administration, but to really like get into the financial industry, that was the book that really like changed everything for me and started navigating and shifting my focus towards, okay, let me delve into this. Let me see what it is that I can extract from this. What can I gain from it? and what could I actually instill to others.
Absolutely. That's absolutely awesome. As a black man and a young black man, what are some of the things that or conversations that you have had with others around financial literacy and or the lack thereof for that matter?
Yeah, I've come to find out that it's a very intimidating topic for
Mhm.
some people, especially for some who aren't as educated on it. And so, we just try to make people as aware as possible. I really do think that one thing that our community really struggles with is a lack of information.
Yes.
And during this time and age right now, it's kind of hard to even use that as an excuse anymore
Mhm.
because information is so accessible. You just have to be willing to go out there and get it. And once you get the information, of course, execute on it.
Absolutely. You said something that really struck a chord in my thoughts was simply people have always felt that financial literacy has been intimidating, right? It causes them to not put a focus in on their financial situations, that it makes them take 10 steps back and saying, I don't have it right now, so I don't need to focus on it. What would you say to someone in where they could start, right, in developing their financial literacy and um, taking the authority and the appropriate steps that they need in their lives to, even start at the very beginning, the very small beginnings of understanding financial literacy?
Um, if there's one thing in particular that I would for a person who knows nothing, just really trying to get on the path of just getting themselves financially stable, I would always say start with budgeting, proper
Mhm.
money management, managing your money, knowing exactly where your money is going. Is one of the easiest ways to give yourself a raise. A lot of times we don't understand exactly where our money is going and
Mhm.
what we are actually spending our money on. And so if you track your expenses, then you're able to actually cut out some of the fat, trim some of that fat in there. So especially some of those excess purchases that we make that we really don't need. And so the first thing I will always say is start with proper money management, get yourself on a good budget. And there's so many different methods to that, and I'm pretty sure that we'll expound on that.
Absolutely. So, getting yourself on a good budget, thinking through your spending habits. And I think along that line, it doesn't mean that when you're on a budget that you can't do something for yourself, right? And many times people think a budget, oh my God, I won't be able to do anything with some of the things I like to do for my own self. What would you say to someone in getting more familiar or more comfortable with creating a budget for their lives that is going to help sustain them over time?
Yeah, it's for one, it's a natural form of responsibility that we
Mhm.
all as adults have, right? We all have the responsibility to manage our money correctly. If you want to have a source of motivation, then I will always say, well, think about where you want to be at tomorrow,
Yeah.
a week from now, a month from now, a year from now. That budget is going to serve as one of your blueprints or as one of the plans in that blueprint to get you to that desired destination. And so I always say, if you need motivation, then look at yourself 10 years from now and say, where do I want to be?
Hmm.
Look at your kids and say, okay, where do I want them to be? What can I give them that will help them as they get older and put them on in a place where they are now financially educated and are ready to actually go into the real world of things and be able to navigate it properly.
Absolutely. I think that's an amazing segue because I know that you are a new father. You are a
Yeah,
new
yes, yes,
father.
yes.
You had your first son. And when you think of financial literacy and as a young black man, how has that thought of now that you have a new responsibility in your own son, what would you try to build or encourage other fathers in this area of, really taking hold to being more accountable in your finances?
Yeah. The main thing is that one thing we got to understand is that kids are like sponges. And
Hmm.
so they really absorb everything that they see, everything that they hear. And so you want to instill these habits in them at an early age.
Yes.
And so I can't like stress that enough. You want to establish these habits at an early age, and that way it's not harder for them once they say get older and they possibly develop bad habits. Now they have to actually go through breaking those habits. Then they have to go through establishing good habits. So you want them to establish these habits good. I mean, these want to establish these habits early on, and so it'll just help them as they transition through life. And like I say before, it's just a decision that you have to make. It's just a decision that you have to make, as hard as it may seem. I know it can be intimidating, but there's a lot of different resources out there, a lot of different budgeting apps, a lot of different platforms that you can actually use and utilize to help you with putting together a proper budget. Or if you want to be old school and you just want to do it through a spreadsheet, or just pull out a piece of paper and a pen
That
and get
still
to it.
works, huh? That
Yeah, but
absolutely still works.
it definitely needs to be done. And you need to start as early as possible, and you start your kids off as early as possible. Whether it's giving them a weekly allowance giving them a weekly allowance and helping them budget that, you know. And so just start early, as early as you possibly can.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. One of the things we did that unfortunately that I did not get to do with my own children just because of a lack of knowledge around financial literacy, but I gained some new knowledge when I began to have grandchildren. And so one of the things that I did on one of my credit cards, I added my granddaughter. At that time, she was the oldest, so and the others were younger. So she was the oldest grandchild. I added her to my credit card, and I didn't necessarily give her the credit card, but every time I paid my credit card on time, every time I reduced my balance, her credit report was being established, right?
Mhm.
Because if I had a $20,000 credit limit on my credit card, now that $20,000 limit was now being exposed to her at 18 years old without
Mhm.
her even having the use of the card. So my paying the bill on time, she was benefiting with creating a stable credit history, completely based off of me. What would you say to something like that in helping others to do to take those steps in building financial wealth and literacy for their children?
Yes, yes. I'm glad that you mentioned that. Is one of the easiest ways to establish a credit history. And with that, if you have somebody and take your example, you have 10 plus years having this credit card open, and now all of a sudden you use your granddaughter and you put her as an AU, authorized user. Well, now not only is that credit history is reflecting on her credit profile, but she also gets the payment history, she gets the credit utilization. All of those things are actually positively reflecting now on her credit consumer report. And so, yeah, that's one of the things that I say, if you don't know, it's kind of like, wow, you know. Is definitely going to give your children, your grandchildren, it's definitely going to put them in the trajectory of establishing good credit history. And now, when they have these ideas, and they're really ready to strike out into the real world and really like say, okay, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to leave my mark. Now you've put them in a position to where now they have a solid foundation to where they can establish and get capital to invest in a business of their own, or make other investments, whether it's real estate or private equity or whatever it is they desire to get into. But yeah, that is one of the tools that you could definitely use, and I encourage people to use it. It is a double-edged sword. You have to be mindful with that, because the person that actually puts the AU on as that authorized user, say for instance, if they happen to miss a payment, then that late payment will actually reflect on the authorized user as well. So it's just something to keep in mind. You want to go to somebody that that you can definitely trust, and of course you would have to trust them in order to even ask them could they put you as an AU on their credit card, of course. But yeah.
Absolutely. The reason we originally, thought to do that, if she was 18 years old, she had no credit. And I was paying my bills on time, which is something that, we really need to continue to focus on, paying our bills on time. even if it's a minimum. And then maybe the next month, making sure you expand on that and getting that balance down. So I only keep a very small minimum balance on there. But now she's getting ready to graduate college. And my hope is after I bought her first car, she'll be able to buy her own car when she
Yes, yes,
graduates. So
yes.
there was definitely an ulterior motive on my side to make sure that in helping her to establish some credit, not only on one or two or even three credit cards, she would really be establishing something for herself that she would be maintaining. But not alone, can we just do that, right? We need to help educate our young people on financial literacy. I've encouraged her to take financial literacy courses, to avail herself to the information so that when she's out on her own, she'll all automatically pick up the steps necessary in order to do that. So, with that in mind, through your book, because you've got some phenomenal topics in your book that I really encourage our audience to take advantage of. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a few minutes. But in your book, what chapters would you encourage somebody to kind of take a quick read on to just kind of put them on the right path to understanding how important their financial literacy is, and how to take the next steps in growing that for the future?
Yeah. And so, of course, my book is Understanding Credit, Foundational Principles for Financial Success.
Mhm.
It is a primer, of course, on credit management and
Mhm.
understanding what credit is, how to responsibly use it, how to establish it. If there's one chapter in particular that I would say read, I would just say the first chapter, because
Mhm.
the first chapter is really gonna give you the essentials that you need. Is going to break down exactly what credit is, and it's going to go over all the basics, right? All the basic principles
Mhm.
that you need. And one thing I can say about the financial industry is that it's intimidating because the jargon, the vocabulary, the language of it
Yes.
is intimidating. And I read this book is by John Kenneth Galbraith, and he was an economist back in the '60s, and they actually did a transcription of an interview that he actually did with a British reporter. And in that book, he has said that us economists use language or use particular jargon to keep people who aren't in our field
Uh-huh.
out of our field. And
Yes.
so if you are able to understand the language, and if you're
Yes.
able to get past that barrier, what you will find is that the rest of the information will become a whole lot easier for you to actually understand. And the things that you don't understand, you will know enough to where you will be able to start connecting the dots. But with finances, it's just one of those things where information isn't enough. You have to act, you have to execute on it. You can have as much information on it in the world. I mean, we see this all the time with professors, finance professors,
Mhm.
economics
Mhm.
professors. I mean, they can tell you the ins and outs of micro, macro economics. They can tell you how a country is actually ran. They can tell you how the banking structure and how they actually go about getting their money. But they are not in the best of financial situations. And so with this information, of course, you have to act on it. But yes, I would say the first chapter. The first chapter would give you everything that you need, a good introductory primer to really, really set the stage for the meat and potatoes of financial literacy or credit, because that's really what the book is about credit, understanding credit.
Absolutely, because today we live in a world where we have to have credit. As much as many of us feel it's very daunting, many of us feel like it's a system that does not benefit us in many ways. Sometimes even within the Black community, but I think it's the lack of understanding and the lack of awareness and figuring out the many layers to credit utilization, to credit authorizations. And I'm glad to know that your book, and starting with the first chapter, is the beginning to all the things that they will need to know in order to build information. And I'm glad that that book speaks more clearly to your company, Simplicity Management. I think there's a desire to keep things simple, right? Not
Ah,
to
yeah.
make things difficult, not to make it hard, but simplicity. And so, if you can talk to us just a little bit about that, and how your company came to be named that, Simplicity Management, and what's the passion that actually drives it even more so.
Yeah. So first starting out, I'm an avid reader. I read a lot, and so I was consuming a lot of books, specifically in the investing in the financial field, whether it was Burton Mackill, Random Walk Down Wall Street, Jack Brennan, Jack Bogle. I was just like consuming David Swenson, and I was struggling so bad and comprehending what
Uh-huh.
this author was actually trying to convey. I couldn't get it. But it didn't stop me.
Right.
I kept reading, I kept reading, I kept reading, I kept reading, and eventually it started clicking.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I first came up with simplicity management, I took a look on my journey, and I analyzed it, and I looked at how difficult and how hard it was for me to
Yeah.
grasp that information. And so a lot of times when you're reading these different books, I mean these authors, I mean they have PhDs in economics, finances. I mean these are millionaires. I mean, Jack Bogle, of course, was the founder of Vanguard, and so which is one of the biggest investment firms in the United States right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
If not the biggest, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
Charles Schwab, I read his book, and so when I first came up with the concept of Simplicity Management LLC, my main goal was how can I take this vast sea of knowledge, right, of complex knowledge, how
Mm-hmm.
can I simplify it in a way where anybody can grasp it and understand it,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of your ethical background, your cultural background, your educational background? How can I make this information accessible to the everyday person? Not just the person who has a degree in finances or a degree in economics or a degree in business management. How can I make this for everybody? And so that's the goal behind it, is to make things as simplistic as possible.
Wonderful, exactly. And I think the more simplicity that we have in taking advantage of all the necessary tools and resources that we need in our community as blacks, as a black woman, as a black man, as a black father, with black sons, and the list goes on, keeping an open door or an open opportunity to say, no matter how challenging it can be, there are ways to pull back the layers of the onion and really get to the meat and potatoes, right? To get to the real underlying, above the surface kind of thinking around money management, financial planning, and understanding. Because we live in a world where economists are forecasting our future, right? And many times I want to be able to forecast my future by my own
Mhm.
hand. I
Yes.
don't want economists and others to do it, to have the final say, right? Because sometimes we are here, we're in, we're in distressing times, but that distressing time may not necessarily be on my terms, right? I need to make sure that I have control over my own financial well-being more so than anybody else that is saying something from a different lens. So what would you tell our audience in the context of taking responsibility for managing your own financial wealth, your own finance, where there are gaps? How do you fill those gaps with the knowledge and expertise that they need, and that is actually attainable? It's not so far off in the distant future, right? It can be very present in your life today. What would you say to that?
Um, Everybody has a success story.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you're the one that's going to determine it.
Hmm.
Um, if you, everybody has started from somewhere.
Yes.
Um, Everybody has started from somewhere. Not if you look at all, like as they say, 1% of the population controls 99% of the wealth here in the United States. A lot of those people who have obtained that level of wealth, it wasn't through inheritance.
Mm.
It was through hard work. And so they created their success story, and you can do the same thing. I say ultimately, it's a decision that you have to make. and I can't really stress that enough, is that you just have to make a decision to say, listen, I'm going to stop doing this and I'm going to do that. And
Yes. Yes.
once you say that I'm done doing this and I'm now going to start doing that, and with tracking, like I say, track everything, because tracking is going to give you a bird's eye view of exactly what's going on. You know, track it, stop the old habits, cut it out, establish better habits, and then you will actually start to see your productivity. You will actually start seeing that you're getting a little bit more efficient. You're getting a little bit more better at this, right? But yeah, I would definitely say act on it. Just make a conscious decision to say, listen, I'm gonna start today. And one book that I would definitely recommend a person to read, and I think that this by far is probably one of the best books on the market.
Hmm.
If you are the type that actually needs like somebody to hold you by the hand, like you
Yes.
actually need a written plan for you. Dave's Ramsey, Total Money Makeover, and his 7 baby steps. I think just that book alone is a game changer. And if you were to implement those 7 baby steps, you definitely would see yourself in a situation where you are financially stable.
Absolutely. Wow. What great tools and resources and conversations that you have brought today. I mean, I'm just overjoyed by that because many times, we've got to self check. Often, every so often, I find myself checking my Amazon orders from the previous years. And I'm like, girl, this is where your money has gone, right?
Yes, 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 yes.
Already rich, right? He's a billionaire, and he getting all your little bit of change. And how I needed to change the trajectory of my own path and where my financial resources were going, right? So it's so important that we self reflect. It's so important that as we speak to ourselves, I always tell my audience and many of my clients, real change begins with you first, right? And so you've spoken some real amazing words of wisdom. And I love the fact that it is just so real and relevant. And any one of us can do that in any part of our lives at any time. So starting at the beginning, starting today, right? It's okay. You could have been jacked up for months before or years before, but when you make a quality to decision to start now, that is just the next step for you to make some better choices beyond the challenge,
Yeah.
right? So, Joseph, I'm so excited that you have joined us today. Take a moment again to share the title of your book and where our audience can purchase it.
Yes, ma'am. And I just want to add was one thing real quick, is that it's a process. It takes time. And so I don't want people to get caught up in thinking that this is something that can just happen overnight. Nothing happens overnight. Everything
Absolutely.
takes time, right? You have to invest the time, you have to invest the energy into this. And then you would be able to see the fruits to that labor, right? But where there's no labor, there's no fruits. And
Mhm.
so you have to understand that you have to put in the work, and that you have to understand that this is a process. This is a plan, and a plan, and when you formulate a plan, right, it has multiple steps in it that you have to take, right? It's not just one step and then boom, I'm here. No, it's multiple steps you have to take. Even when you get in your car and you put in that destination in your GPS,
Mhm.
you have a couple of lights that you have to go through before you get ultimately to that destination.
That
And so
destination.
it's the same thing. Just know that it's going to be some stop lights, it's going to be some stop signs, it's going to be some yield signs. It's going to be some things in the middle. It might be a couple of accidents along
Mhm.
the way, but you have to stay dedicated. Have to stay dedicated. Have to keep your head held high, and you have to understand that through any trial, through any tribulation, it builds character. It builds character, and it only makes you stronger.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your book as we're getting ready to wrap up this episode today.
Yes, ma'am. So my book, of course, is Understanding Credit, Foundational Principles for Financial Success. Right now, you can currently find it on Amazon, and it is an ebook right now. I'm actually in the process of um, expounding on it and actually getting hard copies made available to the public. But as of right now, yes, you can find it on Amazon. Understanding Credit, Foundational Principles for Financial Success. Yeah, so please check it out, leave a review, tell me what you think, and I'm always eager to hear any type of feedback because, like I said, I'm here to serve the people.
Absolutely. I actually purchased a copy already, and
Thank
I'm
you,
so
thank you.
excited. And one of the reasons why I wanted you to join our podcast with such sharing such value added information. Well, everyone, would you just say thanks and hey, everybody, give a shout out to this amazing young man that is just thriving in his business, Simplicity Management, Joseph Price. We're so glad that he had an opportunity to come and share with us today. And the goodness and good conversation of let's just talk about it continues next week, same time, same channel. We have a phenomenal new guest joining us as well, and we cannot wait till you join us. Listen, thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Well, everyone, that's all we got time for right now, but we'll keep the conversations moving and topics flowing. Join us for a new episode every Sunday at 8 p.m. for Let's Just Talk About It. Don't miss it, and don't forget to follow us on all social media platforms, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. We'll always have a little something for you if you do. I'm your host, Dr. Mischele Watson, and I'll see you on our next episode. Be blessed.